Heya Cryptozens. It's 10 p.m. Pacific time. The date is October 7th, 2022. Welcome back to the Crypto Overnighter. My name is Nikodemus, and I'll be your host as we take a nightly look at the crypto, NFT, and metaverse space and the industry that surrounds it. And keep in mind, nothing in this show should ever be considered financial advice. The Ftx Token Surge today, over 7%. This was in response to news that FTX was going to launch a debit card partnership with Visa. And what that means is they'll be rolling out debit cards to users in 40 countries. Right now, largely focused on Latin America, Europe, and Asia. And apparently, there's a whole lot of free going on here. I mean, this means that users can pay for goods and services using their debit card with zero fees. And also, the card ownership is reputedly free of charge. Now, Sam Bankman-Fried has made no secret of his desire to roll out an FTX debit card, and they've been heading in that direction, working with TradFi payment rails rather than something like a Lightning network. This comes from his belief that Bitcoin as a payment network just won't work. As we like to do on the show, let's take a look at the numbers. At the time of writing, FTX coin has a market cap of $3.2 billion. When news broke of the partnership, the price spiked from $24.62, shooting up to $25.39. However, the price has steadily fallen since that time and is currently in negative territory with a drop of 0.7%. Another exchange set crypto Twitter afire today, although I'm sure they would rather have sat this one out. Because when I woke up this morning, people were talking about the Binance chain hack. So what happened is Binance's blockchain, BNB, was paused early this morning of the 6th. And this was in response to an exploit on their cross-chain bridge. See, I keep telling you, these bridges are a problem. Anyway, attackers made off with around $100 million in crypto. That was first reports. So they paused the blockchain and announced it with their official Twitter account. They paused the BSC due to what they called irregular activity. Later, they tweeted out that things were under maintenance. All deposits and withdrawals suspended. And then later, they acknowledged it was a potential exploit. Their tweet said, quote, "To confirm, we have suspended BSC after having determined a potential exploit. All systems are now contained, and we are immediately investigating the potential vulnerability. We know the community will assist and help freeze any transfers. All funds are safe." And of course, that sent the Twitter mill into overdrive with claims that BNB had suffered a massive attack. On-chain analytics indicated that attackers made off with roughly 2 million Binance coin. The estimate was later updated when BNB chain developer on Reddit confirmed that there was a hack. They said the initial estimates were between $100 and $110 million worth, 7 million frozen. And Binance is saying that their user funds are safe, that the systems are contained, and that makes sense because it looks like what this guy did was create a bunch of BNB out of thin air. And so they took 1 million Binance coin that they created and then deposited that into Venus Protocol. And then they used that to borrow 150 million in stablecoins. And these stablecoins were swapped for Ethereum, Phantom Protocol, and Polygon before the chain was paused. Remember when I said that there was 2 million stolen? The other million ended up in the Stargate Protocol. So out of $600 million stolen, estimates were that they made off with 100 billion or so. 400 million or so was frozen on the Binance chain. In response to the hack, Binance froze the blockchain. It was restarted not too long afterward, and then the blockchain took to Twitter to announce that validators were confirming their status. They also upgraded some community infrastructure as well. So a couple hours before the network suspension was resolved, the blockchain updated the community again. They tweeted out that they were working to stop hacker accounts and asked node runners to update their versions. Founder and CEO CZ also spoke on the incident. He tweeted out, quote, "An exploit on the cross-chain bridge BSC token hub resulted in extra BNB. We have asked all validators to temporarily suspend BSC. The issue is contained now. Your funds are safe. We apologize for the inconvenience and will provide further updates accordingly. Now, since then, Tether has posted that they've blacklisted the hacker's wallet address, and then later estimates updated the amount stolen to around 70-80 million. Anyway, their system is back up and running. Binance announced that they would be holding a series of on-chain votes to determine whether the hacked funds should be frozen or not. They'll also be voting on a bug bounty reward system. Staying with Binance here, they also announced an increase in their user growth in the Middle East and Northern Africa region, or MENA. They said that there was a 49% surge in user signups so far this year. And we've been covering their progress on the show. They've been acquiring licensing and partnerships with licensed and regulated firms, and then they use that to increase their footprint within the region. So far, Dubai, they've grown their team to 400 employees. Their plan is to work with Dubai and the UAE to build out a virtual asset infrastructure designed to protect the market and investors. So, as an example of how they grow within a region, Binance partnered with an on-payment service provider in Bahrain called EasyPay. They're using that partnership to launch as Binance Pay to allow their customers to use crypto as a payment instrument. As we like to do on this show, let's take a look at the numbers. At the time of writing, the global crypto market cap is $947 billion. That's down 0.9%. The top 5 cryptos by market cap are Bitcoin down 1.79%, Ethereum down 1.42%, Tether, USDC, and Binance Coin down 0.09%. So not suffering too much from that hack earlier. Litigation is reportedly slowing down compensation to Terra owners. That's the claim of the Luna Foundation Guard. The LFG reportedly has a plan, but they say that plan is frozen due to a threat of litigation. They announced this in a tweet this morning. Quote, "Our goal is to distribute LFG's remaining assets to those impacted by the DPEG smallest holders first. Unfortunately, due to ongoing and threatened litigation, distribution is not possible at this time. While these matters are outstanding, there can be no timeline established for resolution." I'm not sure how successful that plan would be regardless, because while LFG says that $100 million or so in reserve, and while $100 million sounds like a lot, it's not much. Not when compared to the estimated $60 billion in value wiped out when Terra USD depegged. So, appropriately, of course, Do Kwon takes center stage here as well, even if indirectly. Because recently, South Korean authorities announced that they froze some $40 million or so of crypto belonging to Do Kwon. Remember when that happened, Kwon tweeted, quote, "I don't know whose they've frozen, but good for them. Hope they use it for good." Makes me wonder if in their attempt to freeze Kwon's funds, they ended up freezing LFG's instead. Which is plausible, but here's why. LFG was established by Terraform Labs back in January. Now, their job was to protect Terra USD's dollar peg. Well, they failed at that rather famously. But when LFG was formed, they had a 5-person governance council. Apparently, most of them are gone now. According to our former LFG council members Jose Macedo and Remy Teltat, because now the only members left on the board are Do Kwon and Nicholas Placius. So if Kwon had been manipulating that account, I can see why the authorities might have thought that account was his, especially if he treated it like it was. Staying on the subject of failed bankrupt companies, let's turn our attention to Celsius. Over 14,000 pages of documentation from Celsius's bankruptcy proceedings have been made public. This means that data from thousands of their customers has been released. Specifically, this is information from financial disclosure forms that were filed as a couple of days ago. So, addresses were redacted. That said, it still included names, amounts, types of transactions, as well as their timing. all of the transactions of all of the clientele on the platform exposed since that filing was made October 5th. Dollar amounts, crypto denominations, everything. I'm not a Celsius customer, but that's pretty gross in my opinion. I mean, I get it. It's part of the discovery process, and I'm sure case will be made based on the amount of currency and the types going in and coming out of the company. They need to establish a method for determining credits and debits, of course. But I would have obfuscated the users' names behind a cipher or something, because what this means is that anyone can now expose and investigate a whole lot of transactions of any Celsius user. Just line up the names and the amounts on the blockchain transaction data. Now, we recently talked about how Mashinsky took out $10 million back in May. This data exposes that former Chief Strategy Officer Daniel Leon, we were just talking about him, he also took out $7 million. And current Chief Technology Officer Nuke Goldstein withdrew over $13 million, but then deposited most of that back into another account. Staying with Celsius, an independent examiner in Celsius's bankruptcy case will need to produce an interim report. This report is to cover the failed lender's financial management as well as their handling of customer accounts, for reasons we just talked about. They took out a whole bunch of money before they froze transactions, which looks kind of suspicious to some people. So we were just talking about Shobha Pillai the other day. They were appointed by the U.S. Trustee's Officer as an independent examiner to take a look at Celsius, specifically their financial management and handling of customer accounts. Their interim report is expected to land in mid-November, and this has to do with the question of who owns assets held in custody and withdrawal accounts, both who owns them and under what circumstances that owner can withdraw from them. According to CoinGecko, Bitcoin dominance is at 38.39%, Ethereum 16.39%. Then you've got USDT, USDC, and then Binance Coin coming in at 4.66%. XRP, BUSD, Cardano, Solana, and Dogecoin round out the top 10. Diogo Monica is president and co-founder at Anchorage Digital, and he wants clarity, regulatory clarity. According to him, there are 15 different regulators and no clarity. He said things are murky because of the politicization of Web3 technology. But he also lays some of that blame on crypto, specifically on the lack of a coordinated effort from the industry. Now, recently, Anchorage announced that they were planning a major expansion into Asia. They chose to start in Singapore, apparently because of the regulatory environment as well as the heavy crypto presence there already. So they're in the process of applying with the Monetary Authority of Singapore. He said, quote, "It's about being in a regime that's friendly towards crypto and that businesses want to do business in. We're institutional only. Institutions are going to Singapore, so we're following suit." So working on that project has given him some perspective in the difference between the regulatory landscape in Singapore versus the US. He said, quote, "Singapore, it really is a breath of fresh air. It's very different to have one regulator." He said that because regardless of the type of asset you're talking about, it all goes through the Monetary Authority of Singapore. One-stop shop you can, quote, interact with for everything. Compared to the United States, he says basically there's no clarity. There's little information about what category an asset fits in legally, and even if that company knows the rules, quote, you barely know which regulator you have to engage with. He continued, quote, "We have 15 different regulators, and all of them are fighting in the public eye for dominance of the industry and making contradicting statements. What we want is clarity. We want some kind of regulation." And it would seem like Summer Mersinger would agree, as far as DAOs go anyway. Mersinger is a commissioner on the Commodity Future Trading Commission, and she feels that the rules for DAOs need to be handled by Congress. And she says that holding a decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO, accountable is tough because there's no one person at the top. Now, she was talking specifically about the CFTC's handling of the Uki DAO B0X case, because on the 22nd, CFTC sued Uki DAO. so that each and every voting member of the DAO is potentially a target of that case. It seems Mersinger isn't necessarily a fan of how that was handled, that the CFTC could have chosen to use a public forum to have a discussion on how to hold DAOs accountable, rather than going to enforcement actions. She said, quote, "Before we do that, we need to have some notice to the public and encourage some public input," which is a far cry from how the CFTC served their summons via a chatbot and a forum post. But at least that shows that they knew where the forums were. And Mersinger acknowledges that it would have been useful to have a regime in place that was set up to help DAOs register with the CFTC. But that doesn't fit their framework. She explained the difficulty someone from UkiDAO would have if they did try to register with the CFTC. She said, quote, "We have to change our framework and allow for registration." More than that, though, she said Congress needs some sort of rules on regulation. She said, quote, "We want to make sure we are holding people accountable. The trouble here is that we've got a novel area where it wasn't a person or a few persons that were involved. When you go after the DAO, you don't necessarily know who to hold accountable." And I think we're going to call it there for the night. I want to thank you, my listeners, because when you stop listening, I will stop talking. Take care of yourselves, but take care of each other too. We'll see you tomorrow night.